did you know goldenrod makes an excellent tea?
Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Aaron.
Me.
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
Or what's inside. You suck. Finally, we're going to reveal the... Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Tomic's... veteran of the comic book industry for 30 years. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and this sucks.
Tonight's episode, Hang Tough.
Don't start! We haven't left yet!
Woo! Let's go! Let's go. Yeah, here I am. It's Aaron Live. And why do I look washed out? What the heck? I'm already like old and pale, and I look even worse. Oh, look at, I did that, and it kind of, the lighting went down a little bit. I don't know. Welcome to Aaron Live. It's just me tonight. Shelley not up to it. Afraid that's just the way it goes. She's doing all right though, so don't get too worried. But yeah, another fairly sleepless night for Shelley, so she just doesn't have it in her. So it's going to be me and you, and we'll get through this together fine. As you notice, I got like this long sleeve shirt thing, sweatshirt thing under my overcoat, the old Newsy cap, which I haven't worn in a long time. What does this tell you? It tells you that I'm in Oregon and it's 48 freaking degrees and pouring down rain in May. Welcome to the Northwest. Before the politics went south in this state, I wanted to leave because of the weather alone. And now I have to deal with the weather and the politics. That's what we call maximum suckage. But welcome, everybody. Packed show. I'll tell you this right now. If you don't like art, if you don't like comic book art, if you don't like art in general, this probably isn't the show for you. Because it's all centered. I'm looking up here, and cryptid videos, of course. So if you like art and cryptid videos, wow, have I got a show for you. So that's what we're going to, that's the road we are going down today. Probably going to be a little bit shorter than normal because I think Ethan Van Sciver is doing another art auction this evening, or at least he said he was going to. I don't know what time it's going to start, but I guarantee you it'll overlap what we're doing. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit more efficient of a show so that there's not too much overlap, so that you guys can watch this and you can go to the art auction if you would like to do that as well. I was there last night, sold a couple of items, so I doubt I'll be making an appearance tonight because I have a, just between us, I have like this semi-splash page on the drawing board, very sort of Kirby-esque, if you know what I'm saying, for Kit Carter that I would like to finish tonight. So just... anyway, let's see who's here and we'll get this the show rolling. Does it freak anybody else out that you see the reflection of my monitor in my glasses and you can't really, there, Now you can see my eyes. Okay. Creative Phase here says she loves Brazil. Of course, we're talking about the Terry Gilliam film, which we'll be talking a little bit about here in not too short order. I recently got Brazil on DVD. I got that and Terry Gilliam's other film, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Also a fun film, which I have not seen. But Brazil is one of the most filmically great films I've ever seen. Right up there with Citizen Kane, if you can believe that. It's a very bizarre movie. But anyway, we'll get into it. Pastmaster Dan says Johnny 5 is alive. Isn't that the Short Circuit? I don't know. Sequential Artist. So glad we're all in it together today. Hopefully today's Aaron Live will be a dream come true and not a nightmare. Randy Howell, all the way from Canada. Welcome, Randy. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you here. Pantheon is here. Barbara Paulson says, hail Aaron and maybe Shelley. Well, it's just me, but thank you for the sentiments towards Shelley. Dan, the Pizza Man Genovese, is joining us. Leg Kick is here because, of course, Leg Kick is almost always here. Stippling Vaughn, will we see or hear Husker first? He's downstairs. Shelley's throwing some food together or something. I don't know exactly what she's got going on there, and I'm sure he can smell it. So he's staying downstairs, but he will, I'm sure, claw his way up here at some point. Bill Maxwell is here. How about that? Heat Miser, Citizen Ronan, Major Corn Dog is here. He says Bueller? Anyone? Bueller? Citizen Ronan is here. Fox Mulder, thanks for joining us. Marcus Killigrew, purveyor of all things pop culture knowledge, is joining us. Robert the Bruce is here. Mark Pengrin, what did you do for Free Comic Book Day yesterday, Aaron? Let me think. Nothing. Actually, we went down to see the grandbaby again. My daughter is here for the summer. So we all went down there and squeezed the baby, who's getting a little chubby now. So there's plenty of leg fat to squeeze. Spambot is here. The Hour of Aaron is here indeed. It's not the witching hour. I don't know. It might be the bitching hour. I don't know. We'll see. Citizen Ronan is joining us. Geek Avenger, thanks for joining us. Jimmy Owens says, we are live. Indeed, we are alive and well. Let's see who else we got here. Kellraiser, Nordic Nerd, Squeaky, because where Geek Avenger is, Squeaky is not far behind. Elon Mudd has joined us. Let's see who else we got. Oh, Paul Taylor, our resident biologist, making it in from Canada today. Spambot's here. Lobo Vicious. Gary deserves a couple cannonballs for yesterday's shenanigans. Oh, I think he forgot we weren't on Graybeards. And of course, I didn't have control of the show, so I couldn't blow him up. But gosh darn it, I would have had I had control. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on Wednesday if I carry my grudge that long. Of course, he's just talking about Gary interrupting my whenever I went on to attempt to sell a piece of artwork on the auction last night. Gary continued to prattle on over the top of me. So let's see here. Jimmy Owen says, wait, I didn't sign up for No Shelley. Too late. I know Jimmy's always looking for a little action, so here we'll start him off with this. There you go, Jimmy. Man, let's see. It's supposed to warm up this week. Leg Kick says it's supposed to warm up this week. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Like Wednesday, like 80 degrees. But it's only Sunday. Gary says you can cannonball me now for yesterday. Okay, there's Gary in the chat. Here you go, Gary. Okay. I don't think I'm done with you yet, though, Gary. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. Paul Taylor says 46 Fahrenheit here with 60% chance of rain. I love how he's kind of very scientific about the whole thing. Brian, Suddenly Old is here. Yep, and my knees hurt. I still want to leave at some point. Yeah, he's talking about Oregon. It is, because it's always damp. It's cold and damp, and anybody with any sort of joint problems at all makes it twice as bad. And I don't mean smoking joints, because there's plenty of that going on too, but I don't think it's bad around here. I think it's actually pretty good for the people that are into that. I, of course, am not. But yeah, but for joint pain, it's not great. Jimmy Owens says 55 and raining here. Got a lot of people up in Washington. So we're probably covered with the same dark cloud that followed Charlie Brown around. So Duck Bacon is here. Creative Faye, of course, Creative Faye was first one. She says, you love the rain. No, I don't. This week, she says, I have my final review on my comic for school. All right. Check it out. Good luck with that. David G, no auction tonight, Aaron. Oh, there isn't. Okay, well, then I can just prattle on forever. Robert Doan's Pills is here. Paul Taylor says, I heard Brazil was weird, so I never watched it. Oh, it's weird. It may be the weirdest movie you've ever seen, but it's also one of the most interesting films you'll ever see. So, and it is kind of funny. It's a dark comedy, a black comedy, however you want to phrase that in today's terminology. It's like 1984, but with a sense of humor. So there you go. Bub66 is here. Metal Movies and Brewskis is joining us. Yeah, let's see here. Best Age Comics Brazil was indeed a great movie. Leroy, show the art. Oh, I'll be showing art, buddy. I'll be showing it. Iodine 74. Paul Taylor says, just talk lots of Star Trek. Gary loves that. That'll be my greatest revenge. Headless Bourgeoisie is here, of course. Let's see who else is. Oh, I think that's about everybody. Jimmy says, but we're supposed to be in the desert here, and it's going to be 89 next weekend, so we're headed back north for the next weekend. Okay, well, at least you're going to get some sunshine soon. I'm said I'm not here. Could I be? I'm somewhere else. Robert Doan says, I said I'm not here. How could I be? I'm somewhere else. Excellent. There's deep meaning. Deep meaning there. Gary, like it says, Gary Martin should draw a piece where Atari Force is beating Star Trek. Aaron will love it. Gary doesn't draw anymore. You know that. Okay. Oh, there's Mad Mel. Good evening. Good evening, Mad Mel. Thank you for joining us. One of the things we like to do on this show is eat. And Shelley, earlier this week, this may not sound good, but it surprisingly is. But let's do a little intro first, and then I'll tell you what I'm talking about.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, so she made these. I wrapped this to keep it fresh while it was sitting here. If I can get it open. These are gluten-free brownies, and I know that sounds like, well, it doesn't sound that great, but they are. They're super moist, and I love these things, man. They're just like addicting. I'm on my chocolate overdose right now. So much for me losing weight. Next week, my diet starts. My dad always just used to say, I'm starting my diet right after the holidays. And of course, the holidays never end. There was always a holiday coming up. I don't know if you can see that. Look at that glistening dark chocolate in there. So moist and soft. Gluten-free. Do you ever wonder why we have so many allergies and so many strange things with, creeping up, like autism and different things like that seem to be growing in numbers? Could it be all the shots that they're making us take? Could it be? I'm not saying it is. I'm just wondering out loud. Interesting. While you're pondering that, hit the like and subscribe, because it makes me feel good right here in my heart. Frankenstein fully supports you liking and subscribing to this channel. Oh my goodness. Ms. Stipling is here. Says the gluten-free chocolate muffins from Trader Joe's were good. I have not tried. I buy chocolate. I bought, sea salt brownies from Trader Joe's, but I have not tried the gluten-free chocolate muffins. But perhaps I will grab some next time I'm in there. Tree Goblin HD. Rest in peace. This channel never mentioned Big Pharma. I didn't. I said I didn't say. I didn't use the V word, so I think I'm safe. Yeah, Shelley's just tired she didn't get much sleep last night. So, and her arm, she's complaining about her bicep pain from holding the baby yesterday because she wouldn't let go of the baby and let anybody else hold him. So, and he's getting chunky. So he's not like this little 6-pound, waif anymore. He's like 16 pounds of beef. So it's when you're carrying that baby around, that arm, when you get older, like we are, the dumbest things cause you like muscle and back pain and stuff. You get up the next morning and you're like, why do I hurt? And you're like, oh yeah, I turned on the hose in the garden. Just dumb things like that. I could not figure out my shoulders and arms. I got up one morning not too long ago and I was like, what did I do? I mean, I was just like in pain. And then I realized the night before we had hung my mom's TV, it's a flat screen TV, and it's super light. And I just had to nail in this band across the wall that the TV hooked into. And that's all I did. Was nail the thing and lift up the TV and hook it on there. And my entire upper body was wiped out. It's just like, what? Now, what you could say is if I was working out regularly all the time, that wouldn't happen. But I have been doing push-ups now for months. I just did 23 this morning. I think that for a 60-year-old guy, pretty good. I'm feeling good about myself, actually. Not really. Okay. Yeah, there it is. Pathetic. Yeah. Kellraiser's hurts himself sleeping. That is like, that's like playing, when we were kids, we used to play football, tackle football without pads or anything. We just go wreck each other. Now you go to bed and get up the next morning and you feel like, you just played football without pads. So it's more dangerous. In fact, I had a friend who told me once, and this is before I hit 60, he said, what the number one cause of death in men over 60 is? And I said, what? He said, falling off ladders. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds true. So I don't go up on ladders anymore. Maybe to change a light bulb or something, but never on the second floor, because anytime I do that, I think of The Omen and I'm thinking some kid's going to ride his trike by and knock me off this balcony. So even though we don't have any little kids riding trikes in the house, maybe my grandson at some point would. And then, so, you got to be careful about that stuff. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, it's, we need to take a look at some Frazetta stuff. Now, this is going to be interesting. I don't usually break down the Frazetta paintings. I just kind of show them, have a couple comments. I'm breaking this one down because I think it's interesting. There's you're going to see 3 different visuals here as part of this little short video. The book cover, and then the painting that was used on the book cover, and then a repaint of the same image. Take a look at the 3 main figures in this, the last of our Conan paperback cover paintings that we're going to show. And then we're going to discuss. So it's not really homework, but just pay attention. And so you'll have some frame of reference for what I'm talking about when I actually start talking about it. Here we go. Frazetta for the day. So what did we learn? We learned that Frazetta painted this in 1968 as part of the Lancers, a book series of Conan novels. This is Conan the Avenger. Then we learned that he repainted it in 1980, which Frazetta seemed to have this propensity, is that the right word, for repainting his older paintings. It's like, oh, I really like what I had going on here, but I'm a better painter now, so I'm going to fix it. He did that a lot, which I find really interesting because I don't know. I have a really hard time going back and fixing stuff. I mean, if I'm doing a comic book page and I screw it up and I go back and redraw it, right? But I'm talking like finding something in a drawer that I drew 10 years ago or whatever and going, wow, I really need to fix this. I just kind of look at it and go, okay, it sucks, so I'm going to do better now. But I don't have the energy to go back and redo it. But it seems like Frazetta did that quite a bit. And so let's take a look at least what I find interesting with the original and then the repaint. Okay, so this is the original. Now, if you look at this, Conan is a little big, okay? So it wouldn't be too bad because the female figure is the right size because he would be bigger than the female anyway. It's this evil wizard who's standing on this side of the sacrificial altar. Conan's on the other side. And look at the size of his head and Conan's head. Conan is way bigger. So he almost feels like this guy should be bigger. You don't want to make Conan necessarily smaller because it's a paperback cover and they're already, small enough. But this guy feels like he needs to be bigger, right? So if I went back in and fixed this, that's what I would do. I would make this wizard guy, this, whatever he is, bigger. And let me preface this by saying I really like this painting, but it's always bugged me that the size of Conan, he's so big that he feels like he actually has already jumped past these two characters here. Okay, so this is done in but it's not as glaringly obvious here. Okay, but it's subtle, but it still feels like maybe Conan's a little too big. Maybe just in head size, I mean, you could say, oh, he's a giant and he's, 1.5 feet taller than this guy, which, then he would be bigger like this. But, just for a quick visual, I think you want this guy bigger. Okay, so then he repaints, right? Let's take a look at the repaint. That's not the repaint. This is Aaron. I've never really learned to do this efficiently. Okay, here we go. So now what he's completely repainted this figure, and I think it's much better. She's brighter. So she doesn't, on the first version, she was a little dark and got kind of lost on the altar. Now she's almost glowing, right? And there's more movement in her figure. She was flat against the altar, and now she's got her back arched up a little bit and this leg coming up like that. It's a really nice figure, okay? Beautiful piece of work. But this one, she's bigger. So she seems even bigger than this guy now, the wizard. She seems bigger than him, right? And Conan is even bigger now than he was in the first painting. So it looks like he juiced up the background a little bit. He left these guys pretty much the same. That alligator, I think, is pretty much the same. But Conan is completely different. Now, here's the funny thing about this painting is I like Conan, I like the wizard, and I like the girl that's getting sacrificed as individual pieces. But together, the size variance now is even greater. Look at how big Conan's head is compared to his head. And the girl too is like I said, is bigger than this dude. So I don't know if he just repainted these two and left this guy the same. The background's the same. It's really bizarre to I wonder if he painted over the top of what was there, or if this is a completely new painting. But it's very interesting nonetheless. So he amplified the one thing that I thought was problematic with this painting by making Conan even bigger. So he really feels like he's already past the altar in terms of size. But again, the Conan size relationship to the girl on the altar, I think, is fine. It's this guy is the problem. He needs to be bigger. But I love Conan here. I love this guy, and I love her. It's just that size differential that's always bugged me about this painting. But I still love it simply because I love the elements so much. And you can see how slicker, like the Conan figure is in terms of the finish of the paint job. And it was a little bit rougher in the first version. But it's interesting that he would take the time and go back and redo. It bugged him so much that he would go back and repaint these. And this is not the only one that he did that to. He did several paintings. It's very interesting to look at. And we'll look at more of them as we go along through our journey through the artwork of the great, legendary, iconic Frank Frazetta, who I have nothing but respect for his abilities. But even the best make some interesting choices sometimes that I'm not going to necessarily criticize it, but just say I don't understand what he was going for. And unfortunately, I won't be able to ever ask him, but if he would have talked to me when he was alive, which he probably wouldn't have, but it was one of those questions that would be interesting. But anyway, there you go. That's our Frazetta for the day. Frazetta's work is sublime. Indeed, it is. Delight loves movies. Indeed, it is. You know, sublime's always is a weird word because it sounds modest, but that's not really what it means. It means, you know, sublime is like it means much bigger than it sounds. And I always thought that was an interesting. That's why I always would. I see someone uses sublime, and I know what it means, and yet I always go look it up in the dictionary every time. The online dictionary, because it doesn't sound like what it means. And, or at least to me, it doesn't. So anyway, I always wondered how someone came up with the name ketchup. Why would you name red tomato sauce ketchup? I don't know, but they did. Did you hear my dog creak through the door? But he looks in and he realizes there's nothing going on. And then he leaves, but he leaves the door open. Is there food in here? No, I'm out of here. Paul Taylor says Arnold was Conan, so there's that. And Conan came out in 1980, about the time he repainted this. No, I'm sure that what he was going for was that Conan is bigger than life. He's going to be bigger than anybody else in the scene. So he's treating him that way. I just kind of always felt like it's the head size that throws me. You keep the head size about the same, make the body bigger, then maybe we would buy him as just being a bulkier figure. But when you make his head as big as he did, it feels like he's farther past the scene than he is. And that's, you know, again, just me. Coffee Cage says evil wizards are manlets. Well, you know, it could be that. Well, people are defending the size of Conan because he's a barbarian. Well, yeah, okay. I'm just saying. Just saying that's how I feel. Bub 66. Old man's talking to nobody again. Aaron's dog. Oh, really? Now, I love mushrooms, but ketchup was originally made with mushrooms? Really? Now, see, now I got to go look that up. Aviator Search says Sublime is a chocolate candy bar from Peru. Didn't know that. I won't say that they don't fit. I wouldn't agree with that. He does put a lot of color in there that maybe you wouldn't if you're being very strict. in terms of color wheel and those type of things. You might see some colors in Frazetta's. You're like, what the heck is that doing in there? But he has this, that's what elevates Frank's stuff. Can I call him Frank? I never knew him. Mr. Frazetta. That's what elevates Frazetta's work into that sort of borderline fine art. You know, it's not commercial art. It's this fine art. The thing that held him back was his subject matter, because people don't respect fantasy and fiction like that, like they do, at least in terms of heroic fantasy as a fine art subject matter. And that's, of course, all he did for the most part. And, but he always used unexpected color choices in the background to kind of, and then he'd work some of those colors into his figure as well. And I just thought that was very interesting. And I always liked it. It always, I don't think I saw one of his paintings that I thought the color didn't work. Now there's probably one out there, and maybe we'll stumble upon it as we move forward in the shows, in the future shows. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, Master Frazetta, I guess I can call him that. Leg Kick, of course, saying you can only spend time to look stuff up on Graybeard's studio, which of course is Wednesday at 2:00 on this very channel. If you want to see some real crazy art being created right before your very eyes. Okay. Here we are. We got stuff to do, stuff to talk about. Frazetta was just the top layer, shall we say. We start to peel back the onion, not the failed onion satire site, but the actual creative onion, much like Shrek described, you know, being like an onion and peel back the layers. That's what we're going to do right now. So let's get into Brazil. Can we do that? Here's the thing. I should get some visual up here, shouldn't I? It always seems to make my ramblings a little bit more palatable, shall I say, if there's something else you can look at besides me while I'm talking about it. So here we go. Here's the movie Brazil. Now, this came out in 1985. Terry Gilliam, of course, of Monty Python fame. He did do some acting, mostly directing, and he did all the animation, weird animation stuff for Monty Python. And he was the old ogre guy by the bridge. And he said, "What's your favorite color?" And that guy, that was Terry Gilliam. Anyway, so turns out he's a pretty darn good director with a very unique vision, shall we say. Brazil came out in 1985 while I was in film school. And so it was the perfect, I don't want to call the film pretentious because I don't think it is, but it's the perfect film for pretentious film students, which we were all trying to be. It was the type of movie you went and said, I'm not just going to go and enjoy this film. I'm going to go and critique this film, and I'm going to break this film down. And what does it mean? What is it saying? So that's where when I first saw it was when it came out. Now, there was a big controversy about this film, and it was my first exposure to this sort of the studio system versus the creative talent. And those of you who go back to 1985 might remember that I think it was Sid Shanberg, but I could be wrong. Whoever was the head of the studio, there was two endings to this film. There's well, I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't seen the movie, that might, after seeing us talk about it here, might want to go see it or, you know, buy it and watch it. So I'm not going to ruin everything in it, but let's just say there was two endings. There was a happy ending and a dystopian ending. Okay. And they cut the film against Terry Gilliam's wishes and wanted to release, and were threatening to release it with the happy ending, which then really destroys the entire meaning of the film. And so there was this big fight back and forth about, the studio taking control from the auteur, the creator, and, making stupid money decisions instead of allowing the art to be the most important thing. And so this was a big point of discussion. And it wouldn't surprise me if the studio head, was it 20th Century Fox? I can't remember. I'm trying to look on the movie. It's a Miramax. I think it was Miramax. No. It was a bomb at the box office. I see that in there. Oh, Universal. Excuse me. It was Universal. So they may have thought that they had a really weird movie on their hands that was going to be not do well at the box office, which is in fact what happened. But they might have just tried to do this to drum up publicity. And then I believe they ended up releasing the film the way Gilliam wanted it anyway. But that was kind of an interesting thing that was kind of buzzing all around film school in Hollywood at the time. And so anyway, what this movie is basically a black comedy version. And when I say black comedy, I don't mean racially. I mean humor-wise, a dark comedy, and version of 1984. Okay. Well, let me take this here. Stealth X5 for $2. Thank you so much. Says hello. Hello right back to you. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much. So this was a dystopian, futuristic sort of film. But what was it about? It was about bureaucracy. It was about government controlling everything. And of course, the downside to that, right? Modernization. And not in the sense that Chaplin's Modern Times was about modernization. This was a futuristic, and if you very dystopian, futuristic, if you watch it, everybody's constantly talking about bureaucracy and paperwork and fill out the form and do this. I mean, it is just an ongoing theme throughout the entire movie. Now, I was supposed to go see this as part of the Science Fiction Film Festival this past weekend. I was going to go see it. I haven't seen it in a long time. And everybody bailed on me. So I was like, nah, I don't want to go by myself. So I didn't go. But what I did do is I went back and watched several scenes that were important, I felt, in the film. And I wanted to see if I remembered it correctly, or what I thought this film was when I first saw it in 1985 is still what I think it is now. And I saw enough of the key scenes to kind of piece back my memory together. And I do have maybe a little bit of an alternative opinion on this that I did. We're talking about, let's see. Well, I say Delight loves movies. She says, I know what you mean by black comedy. Well, I would figure if Delight loves movies is your handle, then you know movies. Squib's saying Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is the best. I have not seen that. Didn't really appeal to me. Jake Blues, all of his movies are odd but enjoyable. I agree with that. Time Bandits, another movie that, again, you always are watching Terry Gilliam films and going, should I be laughing here or not? They're very, excuse me, they're very strange in that regard, but they're also just really oftentimes wickedly smart, and they're imaginative, and they're certainly not predictable. So anyway, so Robert De Niro wanted the lead in this film, and but they didn't. Gilliam didn't feel he was right for the lead, and I don't think he would have been either. Jonathan Pryce got the lead, and he's kind of a nerdish sort of, just a corporate worker kind of guy, and it just wouldn't have. De Niro wouldn't have fit in here, but De Niro did fit perfectly as the rogue electrician or heater repairman. And he's pivotal in the film. Although he's a supporting role, he's pivotal. in the film. So here's the breakdown of the plot real quickly. There's De Niro in his his glasses, his electrician protective glasses. So he's a very funny character. And what we have here is, like I said, it's a dystopian future, very corporate. Everybody lives in these like little cubicle apartment housing complex things. They go to, all these, they all have office jobs, the gray walls, the whole 9 yards. And Jonathan Pryce is constantly daydreaming or dreaming about being this hero, and this girl from his dreams. He meets her in real life, in the real dystopian world, right? And so you've got this whole thing going on. And then Robert De Niro plays this rogue electrician. So he doesn't work for the corporation. And so he goes around fixing people's heating and air conditioning units without permission. Because, as he states in this scene right here, he just couldn't take the paperwork. And again, the theme of paperwork comes up all the time. The bureaucracy, the inescapable bureaucracy, and the paperwork and the forms you got to fill out to do this and the form to fill that out. And so this runs throughout the entire film. And of course, you get all these weird scenes where Jonathan Pryce's mom, played by Katherine Hellman, gets this she's getting a facelift or something, but they're like stretching her skin all the way out here, and it's just crazy stuff like that. And so eventually, again, without giving everything away, one of the things I was trying to determine when I first saw this film, I said, this whole film is an allegory for bureaucracy, right? The whole thing. It's just basically taking a step back and saying, this is an absurdist situation, but making fun of, our bureaucratic life and where it's going to end up. Unfortunately, I think we're practically there right now. That's this creepy thing about watching these dystopian future films. We're in it, folks, or darn close to it. So my original, let me see, how can I say this without giving the movie away? My original feeling was, after seeing the ending, that, let's put it this way. You had to sort of make a determination between what was reality within the film and what was fantasy within the film. Okay. Or what was imaginary in the film, right? Now, one of the most clever scenes in the movie was, how should we say this? I got to give away some things. De Niro's character, what happens to him, right? The payoff of what happens to his character. Let's put it that way. I thought that scene, it was surreal, but I thought it was part of the reality of the film, within the film. It wasn't a fantasy. I thought it was part of the reality of the film, where he gets all these papers come flying at him and stick all over him again, after we've been talking about forms and bureaucratic red tape and paperwork. And he gets, being this rogue electrician who's operating outside the government's control. And of course, he's wanted by the government because he's doing this. He's going around helping people without permission and not filling out the proper paperwork. He gets covered with these papers and then disappears, right? And so, you say, well, okay, there's other scenes in the movie where people get shot or whatever and die. And so you say, but he just disappears. And so you sit there and think, well, what does that all mean? And to me, again, it was allegorical, metaphor, whatever you want to use, that he was destroyed by the bureaucracy. They finally caught up with him and eliminated him as a threat to the government, or the big brother, if you will. And but then as I was contemplating this again before doing the show and watching these images again and these scenes, it made me wonder how much of the film that we saw was in fact all in Jonathan Pryce's mind, or how much of it, where did the dystopian reality end and the imagination of Jonathan Pryce's character begin? And I thought it was much later. And now I'm starting to think, did he imagine Robert De Niro the entire time? Was he actually there, or was he part of this ongoing fantasy that was going on in Jonathan Pryce's mind? It's a very complicated film in those regards. But the one thing that makes this an interesting film and worth watching, in the same way that 2001, a lot of people say, God, that film is boring. And it is, but there's some really cool stuff going on in it that makes it worth watching for those cool things, whether you get into the narrative or not. In this film, there is a narrative structure, and it is very absurd. So you kind of, from the get-go, so you sort of take that into consideration and say, okay, this is an absurd world that they're functioning in. And so you just accept that. But then you have to figure out where, again, as I said, reality begins and fantasy begins in this. And you can see when it all comes together at the end, but that still doesn't answer that question of how much was reality and how much was imagination by Jonathan Pryce. And it made me, much like people will debate about Inception, about the spinning top, or, where did reality end and dreams begin in Inception? I'm starting to think that way again with Brazil. And after seeing these scenes that I kind of went to jog my memory with, it really makes me want to go see the movie again in its entirety and see if I can find a connective thread that clearly states this is reality, this is imagination. But what you'll find in this film, regardless of that, is just the cinematic knowledge, the paying tribute to like such classic films as the Battleship Potemkin. There's a scene in here that harkens back to a scene from that silent classic. It's just, this is a film student's film, and it's or someone who loves film. Not just, when I say a student, I don't necessarily mean a formal student that you went to film school or whatever, but someone who's a student of film, let's put it that way. You can really enjoy this movie just from a technical aspect, how it's put together, the direction, editing, things like that, and just how smart it is in terms of the points that it's trying to make. So I highly recommend this, and but don't expect it to be a easy narrative. You're going to enjoy it, I think. If you like odd stuff, you'll enjoy this. But it's not so odd you can't, it's just like, I don't know what's going on here. But there are nuances in there that you have to think about and see how this whole thing fits together. So that was me sort of talking around the film without trying to blow it up entirely for people that haven't seen it. But I still think it's his best work. And this film was nominated for Best Picture, and it did win the Critics Award. Actually, I take it back. I don't think it got an Academy Award nomination, but it did win the Film Critics Award from 1985 as Best Picture. So it is well regarded for a lot of reasons. And that really sort of sums it up. Terry Gilliam is insane. I'm not a big proponent of liking something or elevating something just because it's different or weird. Like you'll see comic book artists or something that they're drawing in a style that's completely different than anything you've ever seen, but it still looks like crap, at least to me. And so I don't elevate it just because it's weird or different, but I do elevate this film because I think it's extremely well done and it's weird and different. So you get both of those experiences. Doesn't have to be one or the other. And I don't think this one is. So anyway, if you got 2 hours and 20 minutes, check it out. It's definitely worth it, unless you just can't stand stuff that is not sort of straight, narrow mainstream, because this certainly is not. But it is, I still think, Gilliam's best film, and one of the great cinematic achievements over the past 100 years. So, and that's pretty heavy, man. or Portland, Oregon. Weird isn't always good. I'm with you on that. But what was the movie with Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges? The Fisher King? That had a narrative structure, but that was him too. But it was also sort of weird, but it wasn't too weird. Kind of like Elephant Man by David Lynch, which is a weird film, but it still follows a narrative structure that you as an audience can follow. Brazil I think is just uncontrolled Terry Gilliam. And, but it's so highly unique and interesting that it's worth seeing, even if it's not normally your cup of tea. So there you go. Do you guys know, did Terry Gilliam direct Jabberwocky? Has anybody seen that? I remember seeing that as a kid. I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I thought was probably the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. And then Jabberwocky came out. And I thought, oh, and it has the whole cast basically, but it wasn't a Monty Python film. It wasn't advertised that way. So I went and saw it, and there it is. Richie, everybody's saying yes. So Gilliam directs Jabberwocky, which had, again, it was more of a black comedy than it was really or a weird comedy than it was a straight up. I mean, Monty Python stuff is weird, but it's funny. I mean, the jokes don't escape you most of the time on Monty Python, but Jabberwocky, I kept, and I was young too when I saw it. I was still, I think, an older teenager. I think it came out in 78 or 79, so I was 15 or something. And I remember watching it going, am I supposed to be laughing now or not? I don't know. So I'd like to go back and see that again and see what my reaction would be to it now. But anyway, enough about Terry Gilliam. An interesting dude for sure, and his movies are always interesting to take a look at. Squibs for $4.99. Thank you so much. There is a cool vid on YouTube from the 70s where Gilliam shows how he makes animations for Monty Python. I recommend you all check it out. There you go. Terry Gilliam doing his animation stuff on YouTube. There's so many good videos you don't even know are on YouTube. Kind of like this one. Well, All right, so there we go. Those are my thoughts, my deep thoughts. Didn't Saturday Night Live used to have deep thoughts with Jim Handy or something like that? So those are my deep thoughts on Brazil. Anyway. Let's see. Pantheon says, have you seen the series The Lex? It's sci-fi, dark, silly, sexy, strange, intriguing. I always go back and look at that whole series. I watch so little TV, even streaming. I'm sometimes have to sort of slap myself and say, Aaron, there's a lot of good TV on our streaming services that you're not watching that you have access to. So what do? I start flipping through and I go, oh, look, classic Star Trek. And I just start watching those again. Yeah, I know. I was making a very broad assumption, Marcus, on that one for sure. Jack Handy, yes. Deep thoughts with Jack Handy. There it is. All right. So let's see. Let's go ahead and do my my top 5 is somewhat interesting this week, I think. So let's go ahead and do that. Yes, my top 5. Now, this is different than saying my top 5 comic artists of all time or whatever. These are the... You want to know if I hear the dog? There he is. So allow me to meander over to my studio door and close it in the hopes of muffling my maniac dog barking at probably an Amazon delivery on Sunday, which shouldn't be happening anyway. Quit delivering stuff on Sunday. My dog wouldn't be barking during this show. Okay. So I kind of looked at this and I said, well, are there 5 comic artists that growing up that I actually tried to ape their styles because they were, there was a period of time where they were that much of an influence on me. And I got 4 definitive ones. And then there was kind of a tie between 2 that I didn't necessarily go full bore and try to ape their style, but I did take things from their style. Otherwise, I wouldn't have 5 and I couldn't do top 5. It'd have to be top 4. which that just doesn't work on this show because I don't have a top 4. I have a top 5. So anyway, let's take a look at the guys that as a kid, I was trying to imitate. Some of them you'll probably guess, some of them you might not. So let's take a look at number 5, which is actually a tie between 2, and we'll take a look at both of them. All right, this is this should not be a big shock to anybody. God, this is a nice piece of artwork right here. This is the Neal Adams Treasury. Neal Adams was a big favorite of mine early on, and I you know, it's funny, I don't recall a comic book that he was attached to that I was reading when I was a kid getting into comics. I started reading comics in 1973, not lightly. I started getting heavy into them in 74, so that would have been when I was 10 years old. But 73, I was 9, and I bought a few comics here and there, but I really started getting into them in 74. So how did where did I know Neal Adams from? Because Neal Adams at that time in 1974, it was past his Batman or detective run, and he was doing stuff at Continuity. And I remember I had a subscription to the Buyer's Guide for Comic Fandom, which was a newspaper, you know, a fanzine newspaper, basically. It was better than it wasn't a fanzine. It was better than that. It was a news, like a weekly newspaper for the comic book industry. And one of the things they always had in there, they would have articles about stuff like this, but they would have stuff for sale. And one of them was the Neal Adams Treasury. And this is one of the first things that I owned that had Neal Adams artwork in it. And so I remember buying this and just, oh my gosh, I just went through it a million times. I loved it. I still have it. And he started not shortly after this. He was going to do a line of comics through Continuity, which was his commercial art studio that he formed. Like you guys, Ms. Mystic, Toy Boy, Valeria the She-Bat. There was others. There was several others. And Crazy Man was one of them. In fact, he released this portfolio of these characters. So you had like a print of each character, and it was drawn by Neal. I never bought the portfolio because I didn't like some of the characters. Some of them I did. Some of them, Toy Boy, I was like, meh. But that's how I saw mostly of Neal's work, was other stuff he was doing outside of comics. And it wasn't until later that I went back and would buy like the detective comics and things like this. But what I did pick up from Neal was, and you can see it in my work today, was certain angles that I'll do shots that are, you look at them and go, oh, that's a Neal Adams shot. I never tried to draw like Neal Adams, though. I never had a period where I was trying to draw like him, but I was certainly inspired by him, and I did take things from him that are still with me today. So that's one, was tied for 5th. Here's the other one. Then you guys might be surprised about this. I was actually kind of surprised about it when I started thinking about it. But John Byrne, and specifically John Byrne inked by Pablo Marcos, because these were the Avengers issues where I started reading Avengers, was right when Byrne was drawing it. And Pablo Marcos was inking him. And the one thing that I noticed that caught my eye was the shininess and sparkliness on Iron Man. And we saw that, of course, Perez took that and ran with it. And then, of course, Bob Layton did a ton of that, later on. But so there were certain elements, like certain ways that Byrne always did, a John Byrne face, you could tell a mile away. There were elements of that I was trying to take, the more simplified approach to the face drawing and things like that. I liked Byrne because I thought the anatomy was comfortable to me. It wasn't so weird that I couldn't figure it out. It looked like comics should look, kind of thing when Byrne was drawing. But it was more of, but he still had his own sort of signature approach. And so there were elements of that were influencing me. But again, I never sat down and said, I want to draw just like this guy. So I've got him, Byrne and Neil Adams tied for fifth in this, because I really don't have a fifth, because I only found 4 guys that I actually aped. All right, so here we go. When I was a kid, probably 12, I started my own comic book company. Right, so it was, so I would, come up with my own characters, put my little logo on there, and draw these comic books. And I had probably discovered Conan well, actually, we had a group of kids in the neighborhood that collected comics, right? And once we discovered that there were back issues being sold at old bookstores, we would all get together and go to downtown Portland, ride the bus or whatever, because we weren't old enough to drive. And then we would just fight over whatever books we could find. So we decided what we'd do is we'd all pick certain titles. So everybody had their own titles they were collecting, so we wouldn't be fighting over the same ones. So I had a friend he was FF and Conan, right? So that's where I first saw the Barry Smith stuff. And so when I did, and that's maybe why I never got into FF, because that was Jeff Johnson's. He was doing, not Jeff Johnson, excuse me. Not the artist, Jeff Johnson, but yeah, that was his name. Kid in the Neighborhood was Jeff Johnson. I know it was, but it's not the artist one. And, so he was collecting FF, so I never bought FFs because I didn't want to fight with him over the FF, old back issues of FF. But I was a Spider-Man collector, and I had another kid that was a Spider-Man collector who was bigger than me. And he was like 2 years older than me. And I wasn't going to give up Spider-Man, and neither was he. So he always won the battles when we went in there together to get the Spider-Man box first. But I collected everything else. But I stayed away from Conan, and I stayed away from Fantastic Four. So I saw Barry Smith's work in these back issues of Conan that my friend had. And so when I did my own Barbarian book, from in my own like 12-year-old comic book company, I tried to emulate and draw like Barry Smith. So I was just totally doing the Barry Smith thing. I tried to delineate all the hairlines and all this kind of stuff. In fact, the comic was called Valon the Destroyer. I was trying to come up with like a Conan type name. It was Valon or Valon or something, Valon, the Destroyer, I think. And but he looked amazingly just like Barry Smith's Conan. So I went through this period of time where I was just aping Barry Smith. But it didn't stay with me too long because I discovered other things. Now, one of the books, since I couldn't buy Conan, I found another book that I actually found quite a bit more satisfying, and that falls into my number 3 category. And that is Cole the Barbarian. I've already told you guys that King Cole was my favorite barbarian character. So I was buying him because no one else was. And when I say no one else was, I mean no one else was. But so before the Barry Smith fad, I had got really into King Cole, and that was Marie, inked by John Severin. And so I became a super big fan of John Severin's work. And so I tried to start literally drawing like Severin. Everything I did had like Severin's line work, and I was trying really hard to like draw like John Severin. And that lasted a while. And again, he was inking, I think, the Hulk at the time. Herb Trimpe was inking, and sort of gave it that John Severin look. We'd buy Cracked magazine, and that had John Severin stuff all over it. And so that was kind of a style that I was aping for a while. But then, none of it stayed with me, I don't think. I don't think you could look at my work now and say, oh yeah, I can see the Severin influence. You can't see the Barry Smith influence either. But this guy, my number 2 guy, you might still see some influences. Coming in at the number 2 spot. Can you guess it? Can you guess it? It is Jim Starlin. Starlin was really interesting because he was doing superhero stuff and it was really powerful stuff, but he had a very unique way of doing his anatomy. You know, his biceps were sort of like pear-shaped and things like that. And I'm using this as an example, but this isn't the first Starlin book I picked up. The first Starlin book I picked up was Warlock number 9. So what happened was Warlock appeared in Strange Tales and then he jumped over because I think it was Warlock 1 through 8. And I think that was probably Gil Kane. I know Gil Kane did some of it. I don't know if he did the first entire 8 issues. Then Starlin took over with issue 9. I think there was a big pause between 8 and 9. Like I think that like it got canceled and then they restarted it up at 9 or whatever. Excuse me. So I picked up Warlock number 9, and that was my first exposure to Starlin's artwork. And I really thought it was cool. And I thought his anatomy was cool. It was like hyper, defined musculature, like every muscle was delineated, all the 6-pack, all the rib cage, the biceps, the triceps, the forearms. And Marcus Killigrew says Gil Kane, John Buscema, and Bob Brown drew Warlock before Kane. Ooh, there's some Buscema issues in there. I'm gonna have to go look at those. That is not a bad supposition right there, because there is some similarities between Gil Kane's work and Jim Starlin. But I literally started drawing all my superhero stuff. I was copying not his faces, but the way he did his anatomy. And I was doing that for a long, long time. And as I journeyed through my adolescence, trying to learn the ins and outs of comic book art, Starlin was the one superhero artist that really stuck with me and affected my style and approach. I hated Gil Kane when I was a kid. I hated Kirby and Ditko when I was a kid. So they were not in any way influences on my work. I loved Romita's stuff, but not in the sense that I wanted to copy it. And I was reading a lot of Spider-Man that was drawn by Ross Andrew at the time, and that didn't rub off on me at all. There were things I liked about it. There was things I didn't. But Starlin really sort of captivated me, and I decided to go in that direction. And so here I am doing all my comic book and superhero work, trying to ape Jim Starlin. And then finally, folks, I discovered someone that set my path forward in a consistent manner. This should be a surprise to absolutely no one, but do I have to say it? Of course I have to say it because it's number 1 on my list. It is, of course, Bernie Wrightson. Because I was always a monster fan. I like superhero books, but I always, for some bizarre reason, was attracted to monster movies, even as a really little kid. And and monster comics, although superhero comics seemed much cooler than monster comics, I still bought Werewolf by Night. Of course, that it was by Don Perlin, who was never one of my favorite artists, but the fact that it was Werewolf by Night, I bought it. So I came in after Plug had already had his run on, and it was all Perlin when I was reading that. And I read a little bit of Ghost Rider, but there was it was too close to this satanic tie that, as a young Christian lad, I was like, it didn't feel comfortable, even though I thought he was really cool. And, Man Thing. And who had a variety of different artists work on him. Plug was the best, in my opinion. Frank Bruner did a great one as well. But then someone showed me this, and this is funny because Swamp Thing Wrightson was working when I began reading comic books regular. Wrightson was already working at Warren magazine for doing stories for Creepy and Eerie magazine. So Swamp Thing was over and done with. But someone had showed me this as some dealer at a comic book shop said, "Hey, you need to check this guy out. He's going to be the next big thing." And so he showed me like issues of Swamp Thing, and I just was like, it was monsters, really cool style. And plus he put it in my head, this guy is going to be big. You know, you need to collect this guy. This guy's going to be hot, you know. And so I went back and bought all the Swamp Thing issues. And then I went and started looking for Creepy and Warren magazines and anything I could find that had Wrightson artwork in it. And then I became a Wrightson addict. And so from probably age, let's see, probably 1975-ish, which would have been, I was 11 years old. So probably about from when I was 11 or 12 years old to when I was 18, it was all Wrightson all the time. And I was literally getting to a point where I was trying to make my stuff look like Wrightson's work. And when I got to be about 18, it really was starting to look like Wrightson's work. And I was like, that's what it kind of dawned on me, that I needed to stop doing this. Or I was just going to be a cheap imitation of Wrightson. Now I'm an expensive imitation of Wrightson. No. So I got rid of all my Wrightson stuff. Of course, later bought it back at higher prices. But I was like, I got to get away from this. I can't keep doing this. And then that's sort of, you know, that's when you start looking at everything and taking bits and pieces of everybody's style. Oh, I like what, you know, Simonson's doing here, or I like what Frank Miller's doing there. Or I like what Burns doing there, or I like what this guy's doing, or, you know, Keown, or, you know, whoever. And you start taking bits and pieces of all these different things and creating what you hope is your own style. There it is. Ron J's got it. Rip Off Comics #1. Go find it. Bob Brown drew Warlock 628. Okay, but what issues did Buscema? Did you already mention that up there? Let's see. Yeah, I literally spent every dime. I would go like mow lawns, do whatever I could to earn money. Even if it was just taking bottles back, you know. And I took literally, until I got a car when I was 16, every dime I made from when I was 9 years old to 16 was spent on comic books and expanding my collection. I hate to do this, Mrs. Stippling, but we don't like to talk about Atari Force on this show. Yeah, Son of Satan. Yeah, I was like, I probably shouldn't buy that. I don't think my mom would be too happy. But it's weird because I did like monsters, and I did think Mephisto was like cool. Well, Mephisto was only cool when Buscema drew him, and you can pretty much say that about anything. Oh, that was really cool when John Buscema. Loki. How cool is Loki when John Buscema draws him? So yeah. Okay, so Buscema just did the one issue. Now you know this as well, Marcus, but off topic. John Buscema drew the 3rd issue of Howard the Duck, and it's fantastic. Of course, Bruner did issues 1 and 2, and Frank, you know, it was interesting because Val Mayrick did the first Howard the Duck work in Adventure into Fear 19. But then when they launched the series, Bruner did the first 2 issues, and there was also 2 backup stories in Giant Size Man Thing. 4 and 5, there were Howard the Duck stories. One of them with the vampire cow, one of my favorite stories. Those were Bruner. And then Bruner did issues 1 and 2, and then was off the book. And I don't remember what the details were, if it was because he was too slow, or he was sick of doing it, or he got mad. I don't remember. But then Buscema comes in and does issue number 3. And I really liked how he drew Howard the Duck. And then Gene Colan took over and did the rest of the series. But and Colan, I like Gene Colan, but he was my least favorite Howard the Duck artist out of those guys. And you wouldn't think that Buscema necessarily would be a guy that would really nail Howard the Duck, but he did. And so if you haven't checked out Howard the Duck #3 with the John Buscema art, do so. It's not an expensive book, and it's Master of Quack Fu, so a little parody on Shang-Chi in there. But anyway, so those are my top 5. Those are actual artists that I tried to draw like growing up. And for some reason, Wrightson became the one that stuck. And, you can still see the heavy influence. Neil Adams, of course, because of, again, storytelling and things like that is more what I got from Neil Adams than actual drawing style. But those are probably 2 early on. Then I picked up stuff from Alan Davis, and I picked up stuff from, like I said, Travis Charest, Adam Hughes, Dale Keown, Kevin Nolan. And anytime I see somebody that, is doing some good work, I might say, ooh, I can incorporate that into what I'm doing. My favorite page, and I can't find it for some reason. I mean, maybe I'm not typing in the right stuff, but he was working on, Val was working on The Living Mummy. And that was in Supernatural Thrillers. There was a Living Mummy series running within Supernatural Thrillers, like number 7 through 14, I think. And then 6 was it 5 or 6? 5 was the first appearance of the Living Mummy. Then 6 was the Headless Horseman story. Then 7, the Living Mummy took over again. But anyway, there is this page, splash page of the Living Mummy in space, floating in space, these planets behind him. I don't remember which issue number it was. And he fights like these alien mud people. It was really cool. And, but I love that page. And anyway, I used to know, I say used to know because I haven't talked to him in a long time, but Val used to live in this area. And, I talked to him fairly frequently. And, I mean, he knows me, and I know if I ran into him at a show or something like that, I assume he'd still remember me. Of course, with my track record, maybe not. But yeah, he's a really good guy. He's doing like Western cowboy dinosaur fine art paintings now that are kind of cool. You'll see him crop up on Facebook every once in a while, but he's managed to make a living outside of comics. So good for him. Somewhat like that. Yeah. I'm waiting for Marcus Killigrew to come in here and tell me what issue it is that I'm thinking about that had the Living Mummy floating in space on that splash page. It was killer. And I remember like a dope going up to Val Merrick just, I don't know, 10 years ago saying, hey, you don't still have that page, do you? Like he would have a page from 1974 or whatever when he drew that. Oh yeah, it's sitting right here. No one ever wanted it, Aaron, until you. People talking about their jobs that earned their comic book money back in the day. Anyway, so I like to think of myself as a artistic sponge, always gathering in new information. Although I've sort of solidified my style at this point, you would hope at my age, but always trying to get a little bit better, tweak things here and there. But those are the guys, like I said, that although a lot of that stylistic stuff didn't stay with me, they were fads that I went through as a kid, as you often do, and had a big impact on me getting to where I am today, I think. So anyway, all right. So that's that. Let's take a look at our premier artists for today's show. And I got this gut feeling that we've done him before, but maybe it was just on an episode of The Professionals. I don't know. But when it comes to this guy, can you ever show too much of his work? I don't think you can. All right, Robert McGinnins. I went back, yesterday and went back through several months of Aaron Live episodes to see, did we do McGinnis? Did we do McGinnis? And I couldn't find anything on McGinnis, but I know I've done stuff on McGinnis before. So I can't remember if I think it was on the professionals, but if I've done it on the show, forgive me. We're going down that road again. Now, McGinnis was a guy that I wasn't necessarily in love with earlier in my career that I've really come to love his work. This is the cover of one of his books that it's available. This is my single, and probably it's why it's on the cover of his The Art of Robert McGinnis book. I love this piece. The girl is beautiful. The face really works. The figure works. It's just everything about this. It is very simple, the stark background and everything. One thing about McGinnis's women, and it is probably more in the later 60s and early 70s, they got really sort of skinny and elongated. Even their faces and their legs were super long. And they had a feel to them that just sort of left me cold. But this was back in his paperback days in the 60s, 50s and 60s. And this one's just right on the money, baby. I don't know. It's just a beautiful picture. The woman is beautiful, but the composition, it's just everything just clicks on this one. I love this one. But this book is available. He has several books on his work, and I highly recommend this if you want to get into this and check some of this stuff out. Twiggy. Yeah, well, Twiggy was skinnier than this girl, but if you're using Twiggy as an example of maybe why all of his girls were really super skinny and long-limbed, so anyway, like I said, I have this book. It's terrific, and this is on the cover. What you find about McGinnis's work is his design sense is exceptional. And he also did a bunch of movie posters. We'll take a look at a few of them. This is another book cover. But look at that white, how he uses that white there. Now, McGinnis used, and I'm not going to say exclusively used it, but because I don't know that for a fact, but he used, quite frequently used egg tempera. So you take basically the paint in powdered form, the tempera paint in powdered form, and you mix it with an egg, and I don't know what else you put it though in there. I've never used it before, and it's a very old school kind of thing, but he still does it. And when I say still, the dude is 97 years old. He's 5 years older than my mom, still alive, and as far as I know, he's still painting. So that's pretty impressive. But if you look at the very simple brush strokes here, nothing is really over-rendered. Because my gut feeling is this tempera stuff sort of lays like acrylic. And so it's really, you don't really blend it all that well. So you end up using kind of like dry brush edges here to kind of get a bit of a fade of the color, rather than a mixing fade like you would do with oils, or a layer fade, which you would do with watercolors, right? Because with watercolors, you're laying down layers because they're transparent. You can see through them and you can get the effect you want. And you can really soften the edges really effectively in watercolor with just water if you hit it while the paint's still wet. That's a little bit more difficult with acrylics unless you really thin them out. And my guess is with this tempera paint, it's the same way. It doesn't look like he's doing a lot of blending. It looks like he's laying flat color over flat color and then having dry brush edges to kind of soften that edge to get that sort of artificial blend. But again, great design, great sense of graphics here, which makes for a... Yeah, you're exactly right. The tempera was the crap paints because they used to have them in grade school. They have those big jugs of like red powder, and you put it down there and you mix water until you got it the consistency you wanted. But I got to assume that there's maybe different grades of that stuff. And I don't really understand the whole egg thing, but that was a thing, and he still does it. Everybody just crapping on temperas in the chat, but hey, McGinnis made it work. This is an interesting magazine illustration from, I don't know if this is the 40s or 50s. But this is early McGinnis. Even his signature down here is different. Great drawing, though. And again, look at, there's not a lot of, color blending. And, you look at Boris or Frazetta and all the different sort of soft colors they would work in. This is very kind of like flat color with some shading. It's not as intricate in the paint application. Look at how simple her hair is. Those brush strokes and stuff. And yet, again, because he understands light and shade value, it's very effective. It works really, really nicely. Look at how textured this paint is back here. So I'm wondering if this is egg tempera as well. It doesn't look like oils. But again, a really nice illustration. Here's one that maybe you guys have seen. I find it kind of humorous for a lot of reasons. There was a series of superhero paperbacks, novels, whatever, that came out, I think in the 70s. And I think McGinnis did. There's an Avengers one. These books are really expensive if you can find them. But yeah, there you go. Captain America with a machine gun, taking care of business. It's interesting whenever you see commercial artists do something like this, where they're trying to replicate a superhero and they don't really get it, and so it doesn't have the dynamic you might expect. He's a little on the skinny side, a little bit more realistic looking, but still a McGinnis painting. So therefore you look at it and go, it's kind of interesting. But again, this is, it's interesting to look at how textured the background is. Almost spotty, but that's just the nature. Look how rough. This almost looks like someone with like a pencil drawing, But if you get a dry brush, I've been fooling around a lot with acrylics lately, and you can get this kind of look with your acrylics just by not using them as wet. And so you get those dry sort of scratchy kind of looking line quality. But you got to be confident. If I laid something down in this leg, look at those streaks in there. If I laid something down there like this, I wouldn't feel good about it. But I look at this painting and it doesn't bother me a bit. But if I was painting like this and had that in there, I wouldn't feel good about it. I'd feel like it looked unfinished or whatever. But I guess when you know what you're doing, it looks differently. And we look at it differently. It was on the, it's on the cover of a book, so it must be good. But interesting. Look at this. You see this a lot in McGinnis's work. And again, it comes back to design, graphic design. Look at that. Now, this could have been structured this way because of this is another paperback cover. So you might have had the title of the book up here. Maybe you had some, she was hot and nasty. She was the redhead you didn't want to mess with. Whatever they would put on these kind of like, pulpy, not pulpy, but those kind of trashy dime store novels that they were doing these book covers for. But this girl is beautiful again. Again, this is earlier stuff. It's not those like stylized, really long-limbed, gaunt-looking females he used to do. This is more classically the figure is more classical, I guess. But I just love this piece. The stark red hair, right? And just the figure work is really, really great. But the composition is just tremendous on this. It's so interesting. I guess the book was called Too Hot to Handle. Yeah, baby, with that red hair. Men's fiction. Yes, exactly. Men's magazines and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, well, Rude's influences were not McGinnis, but for crying out loud. Guy used to commercial artist from the 40s. I knew the minute I'm turning into like truly turning into an old man where my recall just sucks. But Andrew Loomis was the biggest influence on Rude's style. But yeah, it's very similar in approach to what we're seeing here. Thank you, Marcus. Andrew Loomis. Art of Roy points out that early eBay was so fun to get good stuff cheap. Yeah, it was. It's hard to get anything that's got any collectible value now at a decent price. But yeah, you used to be able to find all sorts of cool stuff on there at decent prices. But yeah, I really love this piece. Let's take a look at a couple of the movie posters he did, because he did a ton. Of course, he did the James Bond movie posters, but maybe you'll remember this one. Yeah, baby. Jane Fonda. The oddest thing about this movie was that Jane Fonda was in it. It just seemed, her playing a bimbo, sexy space vixen. Jane Fonda, really? But she was married to the director. What was that guy's name? Some Italian dude. And he probably, this is going to be an artsy fartsy. This is really going to be cutting edge. You should star in it. And I'm just like, seriously, I could never figure out Jane Fonda in this. But anyway, there she is, and depicted by Robert McGinnis. Again, check this out. Look at how flat this color is. This is probably going to get a little fuzzy on me, but these are really, this is not much different than flat color right here on her thighs, for example, or her arm. A little bit of highlight right there on her arm, a little bit of shadow over here, and then kind of a flat color in there. So it's not this really sort of, I don't know. Again, the guys that come to mind, guys like Joe Jesko or Boris, or even Frazetta when he was really, trying to slick it up. You'd have like way more rendering in there, delineating either the musculature or the volume of the leg with highlights and stuff like that. Where this is almost, it's kind of glorified flat color, but it's really effective. He did indeed with James Coburn. You are right. He did indeed. Now this is, I can't stand Roger Moore, but there's the man with the golden gun. Now this would have been in the 70s. Not a great example of some of his women, his work on female figures. That's a pretty straightforward figure, not as stylized. Is that Hervé Villechaize right there from Fantasy Island? I think it is. This girl here, look how long those hips are. I mean, he really sort of did a good job actually of capturing the sort of mood of the era that he was working in, and when he was working in it, So this is 70s all the way. That's a nice poster though, but I can't stand Roger Moore as 007. Jiminy Cricket saying, "No, Roger Moore's Bond was awesome." Now this goes back to probably what, 1960, 1961. But I put it in here just because it's classic. Breakfast at Tiffany with Audrey Hepburn. Oh, we'll do that in a second. I was going to read something off his website, but we'll just go to his website in a minute here. But again, look at the flat color in here. There's very little subtle, variances. You got a flat flesh tone here, a little bit of shadow here, a little bit in her cheeks. You can see there's some highlights in this dress, but they're very faint. It's just a really good drawing. And then, some glorified flat color on here. Very stylized. Again, sort of interpreting the mod fashion of the time, I think. Now, my favorite work of McGinnis is the work he's done since he quit doing commercial work, which is remarkable to say. I'm not a big fine arts fan, but his Westerns artwork, if you've not looked at it, you've got to check this out. Now, this is John Wayne from The Searchers, and this is the cover to another art of Robert McGinnis book. And it has, I don't know if it's called the Western art. I can't remember, but it's all his Western paintings, his fine art Western paintings, which are brilliant. And I think the best stuff the best of his career. And he did this in the tail end of his career, and he's still doing them at 97. It's freaking unbelievable. But there's always a certain amount of, like if you look at this figure work, he's a little too long-waisted. His head's a little small, but it's very stylized, but I like it. And it's not, you're not going as far to say that, it's like stylized like a comic book, but it's kind of pushing it a little bit that way, which is why I kind of dig it. Now, I don't know what he's using here for a medium. I don't know if he's still doing tempera. This looks more like an oil painting to me. Just at the subtleties in the face here. But I'm not 100% certain. Texture-wise and stuff, it looks a little different than the tempera paintings. So maybe it's oil, I don't know. But these guys were also proficient in all the different mediums that. But the interesting thing about this, look at the composition again. We're getting back to this kind of classic McGinnis composition where, yeah, he's right in the center of the painting, but he's leaning this direction. You got the doll down here. So he's really pushing the weight all the way over to this side of the painting, which would create an imbalance, except you've got this huge tombstone back here to kind of help balance the weight with all the shadows going this way. So again, a very complex and interesting and unusual composition. And these are the things that really stand out to me on his Western work is his compositions. And like, look at this one. And look at it. You got this tiny little figure down here, this huge rock formation. See, I don't know, man, if that's oil or not. It doesn't look like it. It looks like maybe it's tempera again or acrylic. I don't know if he worked in acrylic or does. He may still be working in egg tempera. I don't know, man. That's crazy. But that texture does not look like oil paints to me. Of course, it could be the way he's laying it down. But again, check out the composition, right? You got your main focus guy right here. This huge rock formation. You got your landscape. Look at the storytelling back here. You've got the Indians sending up smoke signals back here. So you got to get the feeling that maybe there's some Indians on his tail. I just think this is a brilliant piece of work. Who would think to do this? It's just so imaginative in terms of design and composition. This is another one I love. In fact, I ripped this composition off for a John Carter piece I did years ago. Maybe it'd help if I shared it with you. So check this out. So you got your Indian settlement down here. And you go up here and this guy's on this huge rock formation, right? And you got this shadow down here. So what happens? We don't even look at this because it's so dark. It pushes us up here. And so we look at it here. We see our guy right here. And because he puts that shadow there, it takes us right to here where it's also light. Excuse me. It's just brilliant. And it's, again, most Western artists, they'll go out and, like James Bama was a perfect example. He would go out and shoot reference. And of course, he was a photorealist, but this is all out of McGinnis's head. Okay. He's not referencing this like he posed a guy on a horse and he, found this rock or whatever. He's imagining these scenes out of his head, which is just remarkable for a guy to be doing fine art in that way. And that's what makes it so interesting and so much more interesting than the usual fine art Western stuff you see. This, again, another interesting composition. So you push your cowboy all the way over to the right and he's firing back to the left, or at least pointing the gun back to the left of this Indian here. And then you've got the three other ones here. So this is really weighted right here, right? So you have your horse, your main figure, your cowboy, this Indian back here sort of creates this sort of weighted area. And then, so how do you balance that? Well, you push your action this way with the gun, which takes you over here. And that helps balance the weight of the composition. But it's just an incredibly interesting and unique design and layout for this painting. I just find this stuff stunning and just how brilliant it is. And this is just a few. This whole book that has that John Wayne cover is full of remarkable pieces. So I highly encourage you guys to check this book out. Now check this composition out here. So what do we got? This wagon is kind of in the middle. Now look at the guys. Again, let's guess he's being chased by Indians here or bandits. One of the two back here. We can't really tell. The guy's shooting his gun this direction, right? The horses and the coach are pushed to the right. So the coach is right of center. It's not directly in the center. Okay. So you have a little bit more weight over here than you do over here. Okay. So it's off center. Now look at this. So the horses are coming this way. And look what we have here with this rock formation and this road that they're on. Takes us right back around like this. Okay. So this in and of itself is a little bit off balance. It's pushed again to the right. He's firing the gun, which takes you back to the left a little bit, but it's so small you might not even notice that. So this is your main action, but then he puts all this directional weight back over here to sort of balance the composition. Instead of having this right in the middle, so your whole scene of these characters is right here. This is probably the center of the painting right here. So this is off to the right. And I just love how this comes around like that. And so we go all the way over here, but then we come right back like this. And it just creates this wonderful balance to an off-centered piece. And as again, it's a perfect example of you take your main figures, take them off the center, but then how you can balance the whole thing by how you work in the elements in the background and the foreground. Brilliant. Now, excuse me, McGinnis still has a website because he's still at 97, folks, man. He's going strong, as far as I know, anyway. So anyway, here's a little bit about Robert McGinnis. It doesn't really give us too much information, but you can get the most recent books about Robert's career: The Art of Robert McGinnis from Titan Books. You can go to titanbooks.com. There's a standard edition, a limited edition. I think I have the limited because I'm a collector. I can't help myself. The first 2 books on Robert's career sold out. Those books are Tapestry. That's the Western one, is Tapestry. I don't know what it's going for. It's sold out, so it's now in the collector's market, but I don't know if it's that expensive yet or not. It's still probably less than $100. I may be wrong, though. And the paperback covers of Robert McGinnis, which I also have. But it's not as good as The Art of Robert McGinnis and Tapestry. But Tapestry is all that Western stuff in it, and it's just fantastic. In 1993, he was elected into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame. So he's in there with guys like Rockwell, Wyeth, Parrish, Winslow Homer, Robert Peake, Frederick Remington, and Frank McCarthy. That's some pretty good company. Earlier in his career, he worked in magazine articles for Saturday Evening Post, Good Housekeeping, Guidepost Magazine, National Geographic. He also created paintings covers for over 1,200 paperbacks. Man, that is 1,200 paintings just for paperbacks. Talk about prolific. Jiminy Christmas. And he covered all the genres: detective, gothic, murder mysteries, romance novels, Old West novels. He did some spicy romance covers, I'll tell you that. He also did the artwork for more than 40 movie posters, including the James Bond films, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, Breakfast at Tiffany's, which of course is not James Bond, The Odd Couple, Barbarella. And I think I've shown it before. He did an Incredibles movie poster for, and it was my understanding that it was specifically done for Pixar to be given away to Pixar employees. And it was not used for major release poster. And I do have a copy of one. And it's really, really cool. So you can, I didn't bring that up because I've shown it before, but just Google McGinnis Incredibles poster and it'll come up. And it's really, really cool. Says here now, Robert also creates gallery quality paintings from his own imagination. So they kind of like, that's what I brought up earlier, that he wasn't photo referencing this stuff in terms of, setting up the scene and then painting it like most fine artists do. He's doing it out of his head. And I'm not saying he didn't use reference for the horse or the cowboy or anything else. I'm just saying that he's creating these images out of his own mind. And that's why they sort of have a comic book sort of exaggerated feel to them, I think. And he's depicting such favorite subjects as fashionable ladies, tranquil nature scenes. Like he does do landscapes and stuff like that. And they're way more interesting than most of what you see. The Old West scenes. And again, they bring up Tapestry, the paintings of Robert E. McGinnis. And it says down here at the bottom, which I think is kind of funny, Robert is a very humble and unpretentious person. And he's very grateful to be able to do what he loves. He loves and he lives to paint. So there you go. But you can go through his, and this is just robertmcginnis.com. So you can go through his movie poster artwork. Woody Allen. So look at that. That looks like Gregory Peck, and that's obviously Sophia Loren. I don't know what movie that's for. There's some of the Bond stuff. To be honest with you, it doesn't really show a ton of his work, considering how much he's done. There you go. Here's the one from the book cover that we looked at. Kill Now, Pay Later. Oh, baby. The Wrong Ones. Look at that. Look at the Murder Me for Nickels. Look at there. There's a little six. That's what I'm talking about. Look how long this leg is on this girl. So he's starting to get these kind of stylized figure work, very skinny women that you see in his more of his like early 70s work. But there's some of his paperback cover. Look at the sauce on this one. Look at this. This dude is buck naked and he's pulling this chick towards him. Tender is the storm, folks, right here. This is not a tender storm. I'm telling you that right now. Just, I mean, an amazing amount of prolific painter, this guy. There you go. There's the homepage. So go check that out. RobertMcGinnis.com. Really one of my favorite artists, illustrators. And some groovy stuff right there. That's a good point. Delight loves movies. You do see, especially because Stranko did a fair share of paperback covers himself, and you can kind of see, that sort of McGinnis influence. I wouldn't be surprised. Prolific. Did I not say it right? Prolific means that he did a lot of work. He did everything, and he does it all well. Just really. I'm most impressed with his Western artwork because I find that stuff generally boring, but his stuff is just exciting and it's full of movement, great composition. It's just good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so there you go. That's our good friend Robert McGinnis. Guys, we've been doing this for 2 hours. It's pretty amazing when you start talking about stuff you love, how the time flies. But now let's talk about something that has really become an irritant to me. And yet I can't leave it alone. So once again, folks, it's time for another, I'm not even going to say exciting, but an episode of We've been so good at not finding Bigfoot. I'm running out of bad Bigfoot videos. So we've had to expand here at the studio, expand our search for other cryptids and other strange phenomenon. We've got some alien encounters here that I'm not exactly sure what to make of. I'm not sure. So let's get this show on the road. Now this is actually a logical explanation for the Loch Ness Monster, and I kind of like it. So, I got this cough. I can't shake it. All right. Here we go. Tell me if this doesn't explain everything about Nessie. This is an underwater camera, Loch Ness. Now we got this fish tootling along here. Now watch closely up here. It'd be nice if they showed us something, wouldn't it? Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. Right there. Okay, so what they're suggesting here is that this is obviously an eel of some sort. And they're suggesting perhaps that all the Loch Ness Monster sightings are these eels that are in Loch Ness, because that appears to be a fairly lengthy eel. So there you go. Is that what people have, when they have seen stuff and are not just faking it, that it's not a plesiosaur, but it's these long eels? And if those heads came out of the water, you might get the impression that it was some sort of dinosaur or something. I'm inclined to hop on board with this theory. I kind of like it. Now, of course, I'd love there to be that, in Loch Ness, but we clearly know that there isn't that in Loch Ness because they have sonared it more than once and found nothing. And all the photos of this creature have been proven to be fake. So, but people still report seeing something. Could it be large eels swimming around in Loch Ness, folks? Now, I don't want you to think that I'm a hater of Nessie. In fact, let me recommend to you, dang it, I can't remember the issue number off the top of my head, but there is a tremendous Wrightson story in Erie Magazine entitled The Pepper Lake Monster. So I would recommend that for your reading enjoyment and your artistic visual enjoyment as well. Let's see. Yeah, let's see here. Paul Taylor for $10 Canadian. What does he got to say? He says, "Hail, Aaron and Chad. I always enjoy the Unknown Artist segment because I learned something new." That's what we're here for, Paul. This is an educational program. This is like PBS, except it's good. Well, I guess that's debatable as well, but oh, wait a minute. Aviator stories. He's not even buying that that's an eel. He says it looked more like a wake followed by turbulent water from an engine. Well, they're saying, scientifically speaking, they're saying, no, that's an eel. And we think that, so I don't know. Ronan's more worried about the Pepperidge Farms monster. So am I. The Pepperidge Farm monster puts weight on like nobody's business. Anyway, so there you go. Could the Loch Ness monster just be eel sightings? Well, I'm not an eel expert, but it makes sense to me. All right, let's see. Now this is from Japan, so we know that the Japanese are into their tech. So could they have faked this whole thing? This is a dragon in the water, but it looks pretty good, actually. Now, here's my guess. This isn't CGI. I don't think it is. I think this is some sort of puppetry, or I think somebody actually made this. But it's very cool. And I mean, we talk about grading people's attempts to fool us. This gets an A. I think this looks pretty good. But I'm just so stinking cynical, I just don't believe that this is real, because if you're sitting there that close to a little water dragon, excuse me, you're going to capture this thing. You're going to get your net out, grab it, throw it in some lake water, take it and show everyone and make a fortune off it. So yeah, I'm kind of, whoa, duck bacon. D-? Come on. No, look at the sculpt on that. That's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. And it's got to work in water. So I don't know if there's like some, if it's attached to a wire and someone's moving it around, or if it's got maybe a little mechanism in there that makes it move. Because look at the mouth is opening up too. Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. It's some sort of puppetry, but I still think you're getting an A for effort on that one. Daniel Russell says, give it an A for Atari Force. Here, catch that. Yeah, looks like it's on a wire. You're probably right. But I still, hey, legs don't seem to be moving all that much for a swimmer. I wasn't really looking. Yeah. But look at the mouth is moving. I mean, this is articulated, man. No, I'm not saying it's real. Yeah, look at the legs are just kind of flopping around, aren't they? Like someone had to make that though, and they're getting an A in my class for their effort here. And it's actually in focus too. So, A for effort on that one for me, even though it's fake. Oh, Squibs is knocking down a half a grace. It's B+ because it wasn't super blurry like every other cryptid video. So yeah, someone didn't get the memo, right? You knew I'd work puppets back into this somehow. Okay, Marcus. Let's see here. Okay, now what do you think about this? I think we've all seen. I haven't shown it on this show before, but I think we've all seen this. I don't want to say it's classic, but it's been around the internet for a while. But still, is there a gray alien peeking in your sliding glass window on your porch? This is back in 2005. So this thing's almost 20 years old. If there was an alien peeking in your window, so he's obviously trying to be kind of stealthy, and you're walking towards him with a camera and he doesn't react, you know what that says to me? That says to me, puppet. That's what it says. That's from the movie Sign. No, it isn't. The Signs, that's the one where like the alien walked like by the hedge or something, right? At that birthday party, they had like the camera and the creature walked across the alleyway through the bushes. This wasn't in the, I don't think this is from Signs. But it's still fake, clearly. But could you buy a rubber mask like that, or do you think they had to make that? Because if they made it, you get a little higher grade from me for making it. But the alien acting here is just it's not carrying it for me. Kellraiser says Signs 2, The Return. Daniel Russell says, my daughter's mom is an alien like E.T. kind, not Democrat shill kind. I don't even know what he's talking about. Okay, well, exactly. So if you're directing the alien, Paul's correct. He had no idea what his motivation was. Someone needed to step up and help him out a little bit there. Smelled ant, bees, apple pies. Looks like pumpkin head. Yeah, in Brazil. Yeah, but that wasn't the shot from the movie. Anyway, okay. Now this is Alien in the Attic. I find this interesting. I find it fake, but I find it interesting nonetheless because it's set up. The setup is just too fake. Okay. Now I'm not going to show you the whole setup because it's long and drawn out and boring. But this guy hears noise coming up from his attic, right? And he's like, what the heck is that? And this guy's a YouTuber. Okay. So there you go. So he hears this noise allegedly up in his attic. So he goes up in his attic to check out what it is, thinking that it's a raccoon. I'll tell you right now, raccoons are dangerous. I'd be okay with an alien up in my attic than I would be a raccoon. Because raccoons get their crap all over their tail and they become this just biological disaster area of spreading disease. I wouldn't go near a raccoon with a 10-foot pole. Maybe a 10-foot pole. All right, so the guy's up in the attic, right? And he's allegedly flashing his phone around, but look at is that really what a light off a phone looks like? That is a flashlight. That is not a light off your phone. Your phone has a much broader. Okay, so that's the insulation. We haven't seen anything yet. It's coming up. You won't see it on the first swipe, but when they slow it down, it's actually kind of creepy. So he's still walking around his attic. He's going, hello, is there anybody there? And then he hears this weird screeching noise. Oh, that's the insulation again. Come on. Apparently I didn't edit this good enough. Okay, here we go. Right there. Okay, but watch, they have to slow it down so you can actually see what it is. That face, right? Okay, look at that. Now, maybe it's more insulation, but since it's the whole video that has this huge setup, I think there's something there like a puppet or whatever, because now it gets kind of creepy. And there's like these screeching sounds. So there's his mouth, there's his eye, whatever. Looks like that kid from Deliverance. So now where you know where it is, you can see it, clearly. But, well, not clearly, but you can see it when it pops up. So there's the face right there, allegedly hiding in his attic. The problem with this whole scenario is, how in the world did that get up in his attic? Okay. It'd have to go through the house and climb up his little steps to get to the attic. There's no access to it. And you can get bugs and like mice and stuff in your attic because they can find, but like a little 4-foot tall humanoid thing is not sneaking into your attic unless he goes through the front door. So the whole scenario is stupid. And him going, he yells like I should play the volume just once. Maybe. No, I'm not going to, because then I didn't click on the audio, so it wouldn't play the audio anyway. But I do like the little face once we zoom in. It's kind of creepy. I think it's kind of creepy looking. Oh, yeah, I didn't. He teleported there. Duh. $200 confirmed. For what? Here we go. Grey Wolf says, Aaron, there was a huge raccoon on our front porch a couple of weeks ago. He ran down the sidewalk when I opened the door, but came at me when I stepped outside. They're vicious. Yeah, I know. If I thought there was a raccoon I thought I'd be calling the critter getter, and I'd be going, dude, I'm not going up there to see what's thumping around. I'm calling someone who gets paid to do that. Also, Aaron, I will purchase the Gary Martin tag piece upside down. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. That's what the 200 confirmed is for. Why would an alien want to be in a hot, scratchy attic? Exactly. There's no way that's, so the whole scenario is stupid. So you're getting an F on this. Although I like this little weird creature thing he stuck up there in his attic. I don't know what it is. If it's like a little puppet, some makeup or something, but it's kind of creepy. But he blows it by the scenario he created. Put this in your backyard and maybe I would believe it more than I'm believing it's up in your attic, because there's no possible way I got in there, unless, of course, like was suggested, it was transferred in through like beam me down, Scotty. There you go. It's William Hurt from Altered States. Indeed. Talk about a bizarre but really cool movie, Altered States. That's Ken Russell, I believe, isn't it? Who directed that? And great special effects makeup by Dick Smith, the father of special effects makeup, the guy that Rick Baker learned from. So that tells you everything you need to know. So if you haven't seen Altered States, check it out. It's pretty good. William Hurt, early William Hurt film. Oh, I see. Your Rorschach picture was Gary Martin's name upside. Yeah, I've still got it. Yeah, if you contact me. Yeah, I've got it. I'll sell it to you for 200. Yeah, just contact me, Aaron at aaronlopresti.com, or through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, whichever you want. And yeah, I still have it. Okay. Sorry, I'm from the hood. I don't even know what that means. Yes, Altered States was the sensory deprivation tank, where he becomes a caveman and then he becomes this sort of different form of like, I don't know if is he going back in human evolution or forward? I think back. So he's becoming more, it becomes that weird sort of organism thing. Him and Blair Brown is the girl in it. I thought it was a really cool movie. And Ken Russell, well, I'm sure it was Ken Russell. One of those guys, the British director, there's Ken Russell and another guy that I always get confused, but they both do like weird movies. And this is, here we go. Any alien would have to have the technology to travel the distance of the stars, would not end up in your attic or your home. Exactly. But maybe it's not an alien. Maybe it's a skinwalker, right? But then again, how did he get up in there? And just, yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm putting in my PayPal address for anybody that wants to send me money. This is for He's a Monster. PayPal is aaron@aaronlopresti.com. There it is. Make sure your correct address is in there as well. And put a note in there what you're buying, because I just sold a couple of pieces at auction yesterday and I don't want to get anything confused and send the wrong thing out to the wrong people. Paul Taylor, how do you know skinwalkers aren't aliens? I don't know that, as a matter of fact. But I do know if he's an alien, he's not in your attic. Okay, here we go. I think we got, what is this? This is Bigfoot. I think I've shown this one before, but this is actually clearer footage, if you can believe that. So I thought I'd bring it back. And this is a prime example of why you don't want clearer footage, because I think it sort of, the clear footage makes it less believable. So here we go. That's not Bigfoot. That's a deer. Here we go. I know I've shown this one before, but I think the shot here, right when he gets between the trees, right there. Okay, he looks like he's got a bare arm. In fact, this looks more like a guy in clothes than it does Bigfoot. But maybe a guy in a ghillie suit. But I did show this before, but this is a much clearer image, I think. Regular length arms. That's a dude wearing something. I think they would have been better off keeping it in the more blurred, out of focus version of this. Because it almost, the more you look at this, you start to see pieces of the costume. Like it almost feels like he's got some sort of wristband glove thing going on here. That's a bare arm right there. You know, look at, there's a hole there. His face looks a little shaggy, so he's got some sort of hood on or something. But yeah, and what is that? There's a bare midriff there, and yeah, that's a ghillie suit, isn't it? Folks are saying it's obviously an ogre. Bear. Jiminy Cricket sees the bare arm. It's not just me. Squib says, that's him. You did it, Aaron. We finally found Bigfoot. Yeah. Bigfoot has love handles. Bears walk upright too. That is true. And I think a lot of the actual videos that people find from a long distance off of Bigfoot or bears just kind of tootling around. But that looks like a dude all the way. That looks like a dude all the way. That is a dude all the way. Funny thing is, this could be an actual trail cam. That could be a hunter walking around in a ghillie suit, or a poacher in a ghillie suit, not even trying to be Bigfoot, and they just happened to catch him on the camera. They did say that the trail cameras were all missing the next day after they found this footage. So whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But that is a dude. Chimney Cricket, I miss Wolfman Jack. Okay, I got one more. This one is probably the most clear one we've had in a while. I'm kind of give or take on it's real, but it's definitely fits into our cryptid category, I think. Will you tell me what you think? Yeah, there you go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. This may be sacrilege. I'm a huge Chuck Jones fan, but I'm not a huge Friz Freeling fan. There's nothing I dislike about Friz Freeling, but there's nothing about him that really kind of vaults him in the upper echelon for me. But that's like probably my favorite Friz Freeling cartoon is where Tweety Bird drinks the Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde formula and turns into that bird. Torchbearer Stu is saying that is definitely fake. Where Duck Bacon is no, that's totally real. Indeed, it is the Jekyll and Hyde Tweety Bird episode. It's the most realistic one so far. Indeed, it is. Did they already do the auction today? Daniel, I don't. Someone said earlier they weren't doing the auction today. And the fact that I have, what time is it? We're Pacific Coast time at 6:20, which is 9:20 on the East Coast. And I have over 400 viewers right now. That probably means that there is not an auction going on. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining me. And I do want to call attention to one thing, if I may, before all of you find something better to do. Real quickly, please remember that I do have a campaign called Kit Carter Planet Doom. It is a 64-page graphic novel. I'm working on page 53 right now, so we're getting close to completion. Written, penciled by me, inked by Matt Ryan, colored by Kelsey Shannon. There's a little interior page there. The back cover by Dan Lawless. Lots of good, fun stuff in here. There's a hardcover and soft cover option. That's the hardcover. That's my cover. And the soft cover is by Chris Stevens, tremendous painter. So you'll find the link in the description of this video. Please take a look if you haven't backed. If you have already, thank you so much for doing so. I greatly appreciate it. And it won't be too much longer here before I have this thing finished up and off to the printers. That's Kit Carter Planet Doom graphic novel, 64 pages of nothing but sci-fi, adventure, humor, goodness. Anyway, there you have it. That's the show. Please hit the like and subscribe button on the way out if you haven't done so already. Helps the channel grow. Appreciate you tuning in to Graybeards. Be on the lookout Monday for the Graybeards poll so you can vote on what subject matter we will be drawing Wednesday. That is me, Kelsey Shannon, David Williams, and of course, Gary Martin providing plenty of commentary. So anyway, thank you for the super chats. Thank you guys for joining me this evening and making it another fun Sunday afternoon or evening, depending on where you live. Couldn't do it without you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend, whatever remains. And we'll see you right here next week on Aaron Live. Good night, everybody. Thank you.